Welcome to the Suffolk Police Department's 2022 Award Recipient Ceremony. I'm Major James Bowie, Deputy Chief of Criminal Investigations, and on behalf of the City of Suffolk, the Suffolk Police Department, and the award recipients today, I would like to thank you for attending our ceremony. At the Suffolk Police Department, our officers do an outstanding job every day. Today, we honor those that are the best of the best. Once again, thanks to all the family members and friends in attendance today. I'd like to take a minute to recognize some of our special guests also in attendance. Our Mayor, Mr. Mike Duman, Leroy Bennett, Councilman John Rector, our City Manager, Mr. Al Moore, Clerk of Court, Mr. Randy Carter, Commissioner of the Revenue, Ms. Susan Draper, our Treasurer, Mr. Ronald Williams, our Sheriff, Everett Harris. I have our Fire Chief, Baraki, in attendance today, our City Attorney, William Hutchins, and also from DCJS, Michael Coker. Thank you all for attending. At this time, if you would please stand for our invocation and remain standing for the presentation of colors. I would ask Chaplain Bailey to lead us in our invocation.
Let us bow. Dear Lord, we thank you for this special week. We thank you for this special day. We thank you for this special moment in time, whereas you have blessed us and allowed us and afforded us this time to be able to celebrate those who have been exemplary in service and those who have exuded excellence in their dedication and service for the betterment of our community. We ask that you would continue to bless and keep them and continue to keep us in your grace and mercy. In your mighty name we pray, amen.
Thank you, Chaplain Bailey. Now for the presentation of our colors by the Suffolk Police Department Honor Guard. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor guard, hold. Ready. Opposed. Two. Right, face. Forward, march. Thank you. You may be seated. At this time, I would ask our Honorable Mayor, Mr. Mike Duman, to say a few words.
Good morning, everyone, and it is indeed a good morning, a great morning, if you ask me. It's a pleasure to be here again to formally recognize the bravery, tenacity, and commitment of our police officers and staff. We're also afforded an opportunity to acknowledge citizens who have chosen to step forward, be involved, and make a difference in our community. We'll be recognizing the achievements of over 60 individuals and one very special canine. I want to take a moment to extend my gratitude to the honorees' families, friends, and loved ones. Without your unwavering support and sacrifice, they would not be able to perform their duties at this level of excellence. The personnel we commend today exemplify what it means to go above and beyond. What does above and beyond mean? Above and beyond is used to describe actions that exceed what is required or expected, especially those done to help or serve someone else. It is commonly used as part of the phrase above and beyond the call of duty, and in context when someone has done something they are not obligated to do as part of their job. Public service, especially as a police officer, is a calling, not a job or career. You have a job to make money. You have a career if your job is central to your identity. You have a calling if your work contributes to something beyond yourself. Understand that what you have accomplished and achieved means much more than what can be conveyed in a simple plaque or certificate. We are thankful for all our officers who have chosen the calling of protecting and serving our citizens. I will close with a quote from Jack Johnson. That is, going far beyond the call of duty, doing more than others expect. This is what excellence is all about. It comes from striving, maintaining the highest standards, looking after the smallest detail, and going the extra mile. Excellence means doing your very best in everything, in every way. On behalf of the citizens of Suffolk and the Suffolk City Council, thank you for your exemplary service, and may God bless you all.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now for the presentations of our awards, I would ask Chief Chandler come forward to present the awards to our recipients.
Good morning. We're going to start off with awards from the first quarter of 2022. And our first award is going to be a departmental commendation to Officer Anthony Ball. During his time as a school resource officer at John Yates Middle School, Officer Ball took it upon himself to redesign the traffic pattern for the parking lots, which allowed for a safer and more expeditious drop-off and pickup process for students and parents, allowing for a more safe environment for vehicles to come in and out of the school and a more expeditious manner for children to get to school and home. Officer Ball for a departmental commendation. Our next award is a life-saving award for Detective Green and Officer Carivas, as well as a Citizens Award for Mr. Donald Bruce Bowles. On January 13th, 2022, the enlisted officers responded to a cardiac arrest call in the 1400 block of North Main Street. They arrived and observed an unresponsive male. They began CPR and deployed the AED. A citizen and bystander, Mr. Bowles, also assisted with life-saving measures. The AED was used on the patient and CPR continued until Suffolk Fire and Rescue arrived on scene. The subject was transported to the hospital and was subsequently revived, where he received life-saving treatment. Life-saving award for Detective Green, Officer Carivas, and a citizen award for Mr. Bowles. Officer of the first quarter, Officer Elizabeth Butler. Officer Elizabeth Butler has emerged as a leader amongst her squad mates. She regularly guides, teaches newer officers and has started a weekly email series where she provides updates and analysis on case law and legal issues facing policing and that impact the Suffolk Police Department. Officer of the first quarter, Officer Elizabeth Butler. Good morning, everybody. Community Service Award, Alexandria Whiteside. For the period October 21st, 2021 through May 10th, 2022, Deputy Chief Cassandra Garvin and Police Planner Alexandra Whiteside volunteered their time to tutor students from Creekside Elementary School. The Life Enrichment Center enlisted the help of SPD to increase literacy within the schools. The students tutored by Deputy Chief Garvin and Ms. Whiteside showed marked improvements in their literary skills and gave them an opportunity to connect with the community. Community Service Award. Citizens Award, Mr. David Stone. On April 4th, 2022, while making deliveries, Mr. Stone observed what he believed to be a person suffering from some type of medical distress. Mr. Stone, not having his phone on him, directed a person there to call 911. He then walked to the entrance of the complex to direct medical services so they weren't delayed in the response. Mr. Stone could have gone about his business, choosing not to intervene, but he chose to take action and see that a complete stranger received the medical attention they needed. Citizens Award. Department Commendation, Captain Michael Wise. From January 15th through May 3rd, 2022, Lieutenant Wise had the additional duty of administrative specialist managing the department's Freedom of Information Act, also known as FOIA, requests and concealed weapons permit applications. During this time, then Lieutenant Wise acquired 167 hours of overtime, processing 380 FOIA requests, viewing 58 hours of video, 70 hours of recorded 911 calls, 647 concealed weapon permits, and 18 subpoena duces tecum, not missing one deadline. The excess time to process these records has taken from then Lieutenant Wise's off-duty and family time, which he has done without complaint. These actions contributed to the city's FOIA office not missing one deadline in that period. Department Commendation. Department Commendation, Officer David Green. On April 11, 2022, Officer Green responded to a barricaded subject who was threatening suicide in the 1100 block of Nansman Parkway. His calm demeanor and skills dealing with the mentally distressed prevented the victim from harming himself. Officer Green arrived on scene and collected valuable intelligence to aid the negotiations to a peaceful resolution and taking the victim into custody without incident. Departmental Commendation. Life-Saving Award, Officer Nicholas Smith. On June 17, 2022, officers responded to a vehicle versus pedestrian incident involving a lawn maintenance worker crossing Route 58. Upon arrival, officers treated life-threatening injuries with field trauma kits and the application of a tourniquet to stop blood loss. Lieutenant Posaic of the Suffolk Fire Department stated the victim's life was saved by the actions of the officers. Life-Saving Award, Austin Kaiser. On May 20th, 2022, officers responded to a shooting victim in the 600 block of East Washington Street. The victim had two gunshot wounds, one to the lower extremity and one to the head. Officers deployed their trauma kits and quickly stopped the bleeding by using bandages and compression. These actions led to saving the victim's life after suffering catastrophic injuries by gunshot. Life-Saving Award. Life-Saving Award, Officer Christian Previtt. On April 1st, 2022, officers responded to a cardiac arrest in the 600 block of East Washington Street. Officer Previtt assessed the victim and immediately started chest compressions. Officer Curley applied an AED and administered one shock to the victim. Several rounds of CPR were performed until professional medical aid arrived on scene. The victim regained vital signs and was transported to an area hospital where they were treated for a heart attack. Doctors reported a good prognosis for a long-term recovery, and without the intervention of the above officers, the outcome may have been very different. Life-Saving Award. Medal of Valor, Officers David Green and Austin Kaiser. On April 13th, 2022, FTO Green and Officer Kaiser responded to a structure fire in the 500 block of Smith Street. Upon arrival, both officers were made aware that children may be inside the residence and entered the burning structure without pause. Due to their actions, a 3- and 9-year-old child were rescued from the burning structure with smoke inhalation. Both officers put their own safety at risk to save the lives of others. Medal of Valor. Officer of the Second Quarter, FTO David Green. On April 13, 2022, while on patrol, Field Training Officer David Green, along with his trainee, Officer Austin Kaiser, responded to a residential fire. Under FTO Green's direction, both officers entered the engulfed structure and rescued 2 juvenile children. FTO Green's immediate action and direction is exemplary of those characteristics of a field training officer and of a Suffolk police officer. Officer of the Quarter for the Second Quarter. Third Quarter. Departmental Commendation, Captain Lance Callis. During the third quarter of 2022, Captain Callis and Lieutenant Hooker worked to provide active threat training to Suffolk Public Schools to better prepare them for an active threat and explain how the Suffolk Police Department and Suffolk Public Schools could respond and the expectations of such incidents. Captain Callis and Lieutenant Hooker established and coordinated the school resource officers to attend specialized training to better prepare them for active threat situations. This is especially critical during this unusual and complicated time with all the mass shooting incidents that are continuing to face our country. Departmental Commendation, Captain Callis. Departmental Commendation, Sergeant Rowland. On July 19, 2022, Sergeant Rowland was dispatched to a person who fell or jumped off of the Godwin Bridge on Route 17. Upon his arrival, he made contact with the witness and observed an adult male face down in the water below. He, along with a member of Suffolk Fire and Rescue, ran down the bridge, cut through shrubberies, and ran into a neighborhood. They ran past several houses till they located a residence which had no fence, but was also waterfront. Sergeant Rowland and the member of the fire department commandeered a kayak with paddles. Sergeant Rowland was handed a life vest, which he donned. Sergeant Rowland and the firefighter paddled approximately 500 yards to where the subject was still floating face down. Sergeant Rowland entered the water, retrieved the subject, and then paddled back to shore where life-saving efforts began. Regrettably, the subject did not survive. Sergeant Rowland's efforts went above and beyond what is expected of officers to provide the best chances of the subject to survive. While this did not result in a positive outcome, Sergeant Rowland's efforts were commendable and provide a clear example of decisive and selfless behavior to officers and citizens on scene. Departmental Commendation, Sergeant Rowland. Departmental Commendation, Officer Clay Strobel. On August 22nd, 2022, Officer Strobel and others responded to the 800 block of West Washington Street in reference to a shooting. Upon arrival, the officers observed a male on the floor that was unresponsive and suffering from an apparent gunshot wound to the head. Officers observed the male had agonal breathing and began life-saving efforts until Suffolk Fire and Rescue could arrive. Officers were able to obtain a piece of clothing to apply pressure to the wound, while officers took turns administering CPR to the subject. Subsequently, Suffolk Fire and Rescue arrived on scene and transported the victim to the hospital. Departmental Commendation, Officer Strobel. Departmental Commendation, Sergeant Nicholas Gasparini and Officer James Chapman. On September 7th, 2022, officers were dispatched to an assault in progress near the intersection of Pitch Kettle Road and Lincoln Avenue. As officers arrived on scene, a suspect that was suspected of assaulting and abducting a female fled the scene in a vehicle. As the vehicle pulled onto West Constance Road, officers observed it and began pursuing the vehicle as it failed to stop for police. During the course of the pursuit, officers conducted themselves in a professional and safe manner as not to endanger citizens or themselves during the pursuit. Officers continued to pursue the vehicle where it eventually came to a stop in the yard of a residence in the 500 block of Chisholm Lane, where the driver exited the vehicle. A short foot pursuit ensued, after which officers were able to take the subject into custody. A firearm was recovered from the scene where the offender was taken into custody. The suspect in the pursuit was also found to be a suspect from a recent violent crime in the city of Suffolk within the past 24 hours. Department Commendation, Sergeant Gasparini and Officer Chapman. Citizens Award. Trooper Matthew DeMoss from Virginia State Police, Officer Hunter Gibson from Chesterfield Police, Officer Albert White from Chesapeake Police, and Officer Joshua Sewell from Virginia Beach Police. On August 18th, 2022, former police explorers from Virginia Beach Police Explorer Post 911 spoke and presented information to the Suffolk Police Explorer Post 124. All of these former explorers are current police officers and, at the time, police recruits in various jurisdictions across Virginia. The officers conducted this presentation in an off-duty capacity and without compensation in order to instill the explorers from Post 124 the importance of the program and how it can be beneficial to them in their future endeavors. This presentation was well received by all explorers in attendance. In addition to this, it is important to note that Officer White from the Chesapeake Police was one of the first officers on scene to the Walmart shooting on November 22nd, 2022. Officer White was responsible for saving the life of one of the surviving victims who suffered multiple gunshot wounds. This victim is recovering well, and medics stated without his life-saving measures would surely not have survived. Officer White provided medical attention to another victim who suffered gunshot wounds and also survived. Officer White was awarded the Chesapeake Police Department's Officer of the Fourth Quarter and Officer of the Year in 2022 for his actions on that day. Citizens Award, Third Quarter. Life-Saving Award, Officer Trent Marshall. On September 15th, 2022, Officer Marshall was dispatched to the 2500 block of St. Martin Drive in reference to a welfare check of a citizen. Upon arrival at the residence, the door was found to be locked, but the homeowner had given access to the residence via phone. Officer Marshall went upstairs to where the call for service was in the bedroom and located the citizen lying on the bed unresponsive with no pulse. Officer Marshall began CPR on the citizen. Officer Marshall and other officers on scene were able to get a pulse back to the citizen, but had an agonal breathing. Officers administered naloxone, which resulted in the citizen's breathing somewhat normalizing, and conscious to be regained. The efforts made by Officer Marshall and other officers prevented a loss of life. Life-saving award for Officer Marshall. Officer of the third quarter, Officer Marshall. During the third quarter of 2022, Officer Marshall was one of the top performers in the Precinct 2 B Squad and frequently volunteered to stay over for additional shifts when needed. In his off time, he volunteers to coach and mentor Suffolk school-aged children in soccer. On September 15, 2022, Officer Marshall was dispatched to the 2500 block of St. Martin Drive, which was previously described in a life-saving award. Officer Marshall provided life-saving efforts during that time and was able to resuscitate the victim for life-saving efforts. Officer of the third quarter, Officer Marshall.
Departmental commendations for the fourth quarter. Communications Lead Operator B. Curl, Shane Bullock, and L. Klein. The Communications Center during the fourth quarter upgraded to a new telephone system in order to advance towards next generation 911. The center was unable to transfer the stored data from old phone system to the new phone system. For several months, Emergency Communication Lead Operator Brandy Curl, Emergency Communication Operators Shane Bullock and Lori Klein were assigned to redesigning the telephone screen and add all the phone numbers to the new phone system. This consisted of thousands of phone numbers to include all officers, department staff, city numbers, business, and all contact numbers that police and dispatch use daily. This was incredibly time-consuming, and they worked on this in addition to their regular assigned duties. Because of their hard work, all dispatchers were able to transition over smoothly to the new phone system that had been nearly seamless. Departmental commendation. Departmental commendation, Officer Strobel. Officer Strobel is a highly motivated and proactive officer. Officer Strobel has only been released from his probationary status since March of 2022. Yet during the year of 2022, Officer Strobel has recovered over 14% of all guns recovered by Uniform Patrol and over 15% of all drugs recovered by Uniform Patrol. From January through October, he consistently been in the top 5 officers in a number of arrests. Officer Strobel is an ardent reader of case law and stays up to date on legal trends affecting law enforcement. Officer Strobel constantly improves himself through his legal studies, the trainings he attends, and debates he engages in with officers. Officer Strobel not only seeks to improve himself, but also enjoys working with officers newer than himself, motivating them and teaching them new techniques in law enforcement. He shares that information with more senior officers as well. Additionally, Officer Strobel has received several compliments from attorneys and judges regarding his testimony in court. Departmental commendation. Departmental commendation, Sergeant Jennifer Weatherly. During the fall of 2022, the Suffolk Public Schools dealt with an inordinately high number of active threat calls. Sergeant J. Weatherly led the response to 3 of these calls: Booker T. Washington Elementary School in September, Lakeland High School also in September, and CSEP in October. Sergeant Jay Weatherly immediately took control of the situations at each time, forming teams of arriving officers and leading them into the buildings. She assured that entry points were identified for late arriving units, made communications and other employees aware of the teams going in, and cleared the buildings in accordance with training. Booker T. Washington was a false alarm, thankfully. However, Sergeant Jay Weatherly demonstrated a willingness to enter the building without that knowledge. She took decisive, immediate action and led officers through the incident. She coordinated with later arriving officers, assigned units as required in order to scale down response, and returned to her regular duties once relieved. Lakeland High School involved a report of a student with a gun inside a classroom. Sergeant Jay Weatherly took the call from a sheriff's office employee, self-dispatched the incident, and led the response into the building once more. She coordinated clearing teams, requested additional teams in order to continue to clear both floors. She assisted with the apprehension of the subject who did have a firearm. CSAP was, once again, a report of a student with a weapon. Once again, Sergeant Jay Weatherly entered the building with a team. She ensured that the entry point was open and identified for later units, moved immediately toward the subject's last known location, and took the suspect into custody. He was discovered to have a large kitchen knife in his possession. She then transferred custody of the student to another officer and continued to clear the building to ensure there were no other threats or undiscovered victims. Sergeant Jennifer Weatherly is a fantastic example of a well-rounded supervisor. She is tactically sound and experienced in operations, administration, and investigations. She is a wealth of knowledge for the officers she supervises and for her peers in all assignments. She has extensive experience in criminal investigations and internal affairs and is often sought out for her opinion on issues of importance. She is a fantastic role model for officers. She conducts herself professionally and holds herself to the highest ethical standards. Her work ethic is beyond reproach, and her work quality is top-notch. She provides clear direction to her squad and ensures that department goals are achieved. Departmental commendation. Departmental commendation, Captain Lance Callis. On June 7, 2022, Captain Lance Callis was transferred from professional standards to uniform patrol as the commanding officer of Precinct 2. Immediately upon his arrival, he quickly began investing his servant leadership style to those under his command. In a time when this precinct and the profession were experiencing low morale, Captain Callis came in and began teaching, coaching, modeling, and mentoring what leadership in a law enforcement organization can look like. Captain Callis has the ability to demonstrate the leadership qualities that promote team building, enhanced performance, and professional growth of the individual employee. Captain Callis has also demonstrated through his performance a commitment to the community and improvement in department functioning. Some initiatives Captain Callis led upon taking command of Precinct 2 include renewing the law enforcement oath of honor. This initiative to have every officer sign the oath and commit to the nobility of the profession, serving the citizens and serving each other. He gained 100% participation from the officers under his leadership. Captain Callis served his supervisory team by filling in on numerous occasions for supervisors so they could take vacation days. Captain Callis is consistently making himself available and even answering calls for service to relieve some of the pressure from the street officers. Captain Callis has resurrected and improved upon the Officer of the Week program and used it to highlight and recognize the incredible work our officers are producing. This initiative has proven to increase morale, and officers are happy to come to work. On December 17, 2022, Captain Callis hosted a Precinct Appreciation Day for the officers in his command. Captain Callis served his team and their families to recognize them and their sacrifices to the profession. Captain Callis is consistently offering his time and resources to improve morale. His efforts are undoubtedly shifting the atmosphere of our profession in a positive way. Departmental commendation. Departmental commendation, Captain Lance Callis and MPO Paul Helvestein. On November 28, 2022, officers responded to 2 robberies in the downtown Suffolk area. The first one happened at Rite Aid on North Main Street, while the second occurred on West Washington Street at Master Cleaners, around 12:58 hours. The offender had assaulted one of the store employees at the Rite Aid in addition to the robbery. The description of the offender and the weapon used was similar in both incidents. After the second robbery, officers checked the area for the subject. MPO Helvestein and Captain Callis were in the area of Bosley Avenue and Virginia Avenue when they observed a subject walking past them on Bosley Avenue. MPO Helvestein initially observed him on South Broad Street and headed him off on Bosley Avenue. As the subject walked past, MPO Helvestein and Captain Callis were out of their vehicles. MPO Helvestein pulled up a picture from the Rite Aid robbery and noticed the subject walking past them looked similar though the clothing was different from the incident description. Captain Callis and MPO Helvestein made consensual contact with the subject. The male said he was coming from work. The suspect was subsequently taken into custody and transported to headquarters and later charged with multiple violent felony offenses. Departmental commendation. Departmental commendation, Lieutenant Robert Fairman. Concluding the fourth quarter of 2022, Lieutenant Fairman accepted Chief Chandler's task to improve, update our active shooter response. Lieutenant Fairman spent a minimum of 60 hours of his own time in preparing, organizing, coordinating, and securing resources to train for such a threat. Lieutenant Fairman developed a training plan and updated the existing active threat policy based on recent active shooter events around the country to reflect best practices. Once he had a draft of operations, he enlisted the help of the SWAT team and the fire department to test theories of operating during an active threat event. An after-action evaluation was conducted to enhance existing practices and use the knowledge in developing testing for the rest of the police department. During the month of August 2022, 12 classes with practical exercises were conducted to train officers for an active threat. 108 officers were trained during these scenarios. In December, headquarters staff were trained in an active threat scenario centered around City Hall, training approximately 70 more personnel. The logistics of securing locations for training, gathering and coordinating the instructor cadre, gathering training aids such as the breaching door and other specialized equipment were all developed and tracked from inception to cleanup by Lieutenant Fairman, and this was in addition to his daily duties. Departmental commendation. Departmental commendation, Officer Johnny Chacon and Officer James Chapman. On 10/30/2022, Officers Chapman and Chacon were dispatched to 112 South 5th Street for a report of a domestic assault. While investigating the alleged crime, officers were made aware that there was possibly a firearm involved. Both officers interrogated an alleged offender and found that the firearm related to the assault, along with an illegal amount of marijuana, was inside of the residence. Officers entered the residence and ended up finding a loaded handgun and 1.3 pounds of marijuana. The marijuana was found to be packaged for sale along with other distribution aids. After interview and interrogation of the offender and another person involved, the offender was able to be charged with PWID marijuana, a felony, possession of a firearm by a felon, brandishing of a firearm, domestic assault, and destruction of property. The recovery of the firearm was important due to our recent rise in firearm-related crime and was recovered from a known gang member. Departmental commendation. Departmental commendation, Master Police Officer Shane Sukawaski, Officer James Chapman, and Officer Judson Goff, and K-9 Salvo. On 11/7/2022, officers were dispatched to the area of the 200 block of Pinner Street to investigate a possible assault. Once on scene, they determined that a domestic assault had possibly occurred. Officers were informed that the offender had left the scene. Officers began searching the area for the offender and found him. A foot pursuit ensued, after which the offender was lost. Officers in the area set a perimeter around the area that it was believed the suspect was in. MPO Sukawaski and his K-9 partner Salvo were requested to respond to the scene to conduct a track. Once on scene, MPO Sukawaski, Officer Chapman, Officer Goff, and K-9 Salvo tracked to a shed in the rear of the residence of a house in the 200 block of Pinner Street. Once inside the shed, the officers began searching. K-9 Salvo was indicating on a pile of miscellaneous garage items and old totes. Officers began moving the items as K-9 Salvo continued to claw at the pile. As officers were removing the items, they began to uncover the suspect who had covered himself. Officers began giving orders to the subject, who was eventually taken into custody. He was subsequently charged with obstruction of justice, interfere with a city official, domestic assault and battery, and several warrants from several other jurisdictions, some of which had violent underlying charges. Had it not been for all officers' efforts, the offender may have not been taken into custody. Departmental commendation. Departmental commendation. Master Police Officer Paul Helvestein and Officer Tiffany Folkers. Over the course of the fourth quarter of 2022, MPO Helvestein and Officer Folkers investigated and were able to arrest or direct other agencies so they could arrest several high-profile violent wanted subjects. The first was for the suspect wanted in murder indictments. After investigating and digging deep into the suspect's information and past, a potential location was developed. The suspect was able to be relatively quickly arrested during a busy holiday season. Another suspect was wanted for murder for a substantial time. As a result of new intelligence and out-of-the-box thinking, information was developed completely by the fugitive unit, and the U.S. Marshals were directed to a potential location of the suspect in North Carolina. Suspect was taken into custody without incident. These are two of the highest profile arrests. Many other assists to federal partners using technology and investigations have taken place, all with the same positive outcome of arresting those escaping justice. Departmental commendation. Departmental commendation, Officer Johnny Chacon. On October 7, 2022, Officers Chacon and Jernigan made contact with four subjects, all of which were trespassing and drinking in public. During the interaction with the individuals, consent to search their persons was gained. During the search of one individual, a loaded magazine was recovered. Officer Chacon was able to find the actual firearm that had been discarded to which the magazine matched. This individual was found to be a felon. Another of the subjects was found to be in possession of a concealed firearm, crack cocaine, powder cocaine, marijuana, and paraphernalia consistent with distribution. Both subjects were charged with firearm by felon, concealed weapon, possessing a firearm while in possession of a Schedule 1 or 2 drug, possession with the intent to distribute cocaine, and trespassing. During the time where the city is seeing an uptick in gun-related violence, these arrests are critical in getting firearms away from individuals committing crimes. Departmental commendation. Departmental commendation, Officer Brandon Pruitt. On October 12, 2022, Officers Pruitt and Jamison were in the area of College Drive and University Boulevard due to a recurring flock hit on a stolen vehicle that had shown up over the past 2 weeks. They located the vehicle and observed it pull into the Arby's on Hampton Roads Parkway. They made contact with the driver and took him into custody due to him being in possession of the stolen vehicle. During their investigation, over $900, packaging materials, a scale, and over a pound of marijuana, a large quantity of unknown pills, and a full automatic Glock pistol were seized from the vehicle. The driver was charged with possession with the intent to distribute marijuana, Schedule 1 or 2 drug, possession of a firearm while in possession of a Schedule 1 or 2 drug, and use of a machine gun for aggressive purpose. Departmental commendation. Departmental commendation, Officer Johnny Chacon. On October 20th, 2022, Officers Chacon and Jernigan were dispatched to a vandalism and progress call in the 6,000 block of Meridian Obacy Way. Once they arrived on scene, it was eventually discovered that an offender had broken into the victim's vehicle. The offender stole an assault rifle-style firearm and approximately $9,300. After an hours-long investigation in developing a suspect, their investigation eventually led them to an apartment in the 7,000 block of Castello Point. Through their investigative steps, a particular apartment and an offender's name was developed. Consent to search with the apartment was obtained. The apartment was entered and the offender found inside and detained. He was also inside was the firearm, money, and roughly 1 pound of marijuana was recovered. In addition to these items, packaging and other items consistent with marijuana distribution were found. The offender was eventually charged with several crimes. Due to the officer's investigation, they were able to recover several illegal items and, most importantly, recover the firearm that was stolen. Community Service Award, MPO Shane Sukowaski. And Zane, I believe. No? Each year, MPO Sukowaski and his son, Zane, volunteer their personal time to participate in the Suffolk Police Department's Stuff the Police Car event. It was unfortunate this year they could not participate in the toy drive scheduled for November 26, 2022. MPO Sukowaski and Zane still wanted to do their part of giving and serving their community. Zane conducted a toy drive at his school to still participate and give back to the community. The school approved Zane and MPO Sukowaski to start the toy drive in support of the Suffolk Police Department's Stuff the Police Car event. Many of the parents and school staff supported them very well. MPO Sukowaski and Zane collected a car full of toys and personally delivered them to the Salvation Army on their own time. They may not have been able to join the main event, but they surely did their part in support of the department's goals by displaying their spirit of service. Neither MPO Sukowaski nor Zane have ever missed this event, and their dedication this year was no different. Departmental commendation. Community Service Award, Zane Sukowaski. Each year, MPO Sukowaski and his son Zane volunteer their personal time to participate in the Suffolk Police Department's Stuff the Car event. It was unfortunate this year they could not participate in the toy drive scheduled for November 26, 2022. Zane still wanted to do his part of giving and serving his community. Zane conducted a toy drive at his school to still participate and give back to the community. The school approved Zane to start the toy drive in support of the Suffolk Police Department's Stuff the Police Car event. Many of the parents and school staff supported them very well. Zane collected a car full of toys and personally delivered them to the Salvation Army on his own time. He may not have been able to join the main event, but he surely did his part in support of the department's goals by displaying his spirit of service. Zane has never missed this event, and his dedication this year was no different. Citizen Award. Community Service Award. Major Danny Bowie, Lieutenant Troy Shelton, Kristen Silver, Cynthia Green, Crime Scene Investigations Supervisor Armstrong, Detective Stephen Termeyer, Detective Jennifer Attard, MPO Dwayne Wiggins. Each year, the Suffolk Police Department assists with the Stuff the Car toy drive to support the Salvation Army and the U.S. Marine Corps Toys for Tots program. This program is very important to ensure that less fortunate families can celebrate the holidays by ensuring their children have toys. The mentioned employees have demonstrated their dedication to the community by participating in the Troy Drive on Saturday, November 26, 2022. Not only was this toy drive on a holiday weekend, but each employee participated their own personal time with no financial compensation. The Troy Drive went from 9:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. at each Walmart location in the city of Suffolk. Each person talked with customers entering the store and encouraged them to purchase a toy and donate the same toy for the toy drive. The amount of toys collected at the collection sites required 2 large transport vehicles to take the toys to the Salvation Army. Once the toys were delivered to the Salvation Army, employees had the task of unloading the toys. MPO Wiggins had the additional task of operating the MIC for display, and Detective Turnmeyer had the additional task of operating the Special Operations van. After the delivery of the toys, they had to return the vehicles to respective locations. The toy drive was a huge success with very little volunteer. It is estimated that the toys collected were able to fill approximately 15 police cars. This is truly a notable community service effort that required caring volunteers to go out and encourage others to do with the collection of toys. This required time and effort during the holiday weekend. The event gave the opportunity to showcase the Suffolk Police Department's effort to engage with the community, while encouraging others to get into the spirit of giving. This event would not have been possible without the listed personnel. Community Service Award. Community Service Award. Lieutenant Troy Shelton, Sergeant Quinn Beers, Kristen Silver, and Alexandria Whiteside. On November 17, 2022, generous donors donated 40 complete Thanksgiving meals for the Suffolk Police Department to donate to needy families. Lieutenant Shelton coordinated the families in need from input gathered from the department and community. Sergeant Beers was asked if he could assist, and without hesitation, he took the time to do just that. Kristen Silver was only obligated to photograph the event, but went far beyond such. Alexandra Whiteside, who had no responsibility to assist at all, volunteered her services and stepped up to the plate to help out tremendously. All of these employees participated in this event while ensuring their daily duties were also handled. This was a project that took many weeks of coordination and many hours to deliver the meals. The food had to be picked up, sorted from a wholesale style level, repackaged for the families, and delivered to distribution locations in the city. The coordination and teamwork from these employees was amazing during a time of year where so many are in need. Community Service Award. Officer of the Quarter, Officer James Chapman. During the months of October to December 2022, Officer James Chapman made a significant impact on his squad, the department, and the city of Suffolk. During roll calls, Officer Chapman is very jovial and a source of positivity for the squad. He completes his calls for service with pace, attention to detail, and provides the service that the department and the city expect. He is often a volunteer for many major and minor details and has a positive attitude. During this quarter, Officer Chapman has made several substantial arrests involving firearms. During the fourth quarter, he removed 3 illegally possessed assault rifles and 2 illegally possessed handguns, all of which were possessed while distributing drugs, and 1 which was removed from a felon. These seizures are making a substantial impact not only just in Suffolk, but possibly surrounding jurisdictions. Additionally, he completed numerous search warrants related to these cases as well. Officer Chapman proactively recovered 1 stolen vehicle as well. Officer Chapman also takes the time and is willing to often work cases that may sometimes be passed off to the Detective Bureau. Officer of the Quarter. They're all the way in the back. Citizen Award, Mr. Derek Hurdle. Mr. Brandon Black, Mr. Rob Goodman, and Mr. Eugene Johnson, Jr. Eugene Johnson, safety monitor for Florence Bowser Elementary School, and 3 fathers volunteering for the Watchdogs program. Rob Goodman, Derek Hurdle, and Brandon Black were at the school on December 1st, 2022. The Watchdogs program has 2 objectives, and that is to provide an extra set of ears and eyes to enhance school security and increase positive student and staff interactions, while being positive male role models for the students. The watchdogs saw the need for assistance and answered the call. When a male became disorderly on school grounds at approximately 9:02 a.m., MPO Hayward received a call from Suffolk 911 Center advising there was a suspicious person at Florence Bowser Elementary School. Dispatch advised that the school went to a code yellow, a lockdown sequence, because there was a suspicious person on school grounds walking towards the front of the school, jumping and growling at kids and staff. The safety monitor and the fathers that volunteered for the Watchdogs program were already engaging and de-escalating the suspicious male. The safety monitor and the fathers that were volunteering for the Watchdogs program followed the suspicious male as he headed towards his vehicle that was parked at the bus ramp. Eugene Johnson, Rob Goodman, and Derek Hurdle were trying to talk to and calm the suspicious male down while keeping him in the vicinity of his vehicle until police arrived. Brandon Black secured the building. Not only did Eugene Johnson, Rob Goodman, Derek Hurdle, and Brandon Black assess and address the situation, they also remained at the school for the remainder of the day, which had a positive impact on the students, staff, and parents.
We will now do our of the Year awards. Our first is Field Training Officer of the Year, Officer Prevet. Officer Prevet has been a certified field training officer since mid-2020. Since that time, he has met or exceeded the standards set forth by the department and the FTO program. Officer Prevet maintains deadlines and ensures the required FTO paperwork is complete with accuracy. Officer Prevet has been a mentor and guide for new officers. He is a motivator not only for new officers, but members of his squad. Even though Officer Prevett spent time training new officers, he still managed to make 68 arrests and issue over 300 summonses. This type of proactivity is what the FTO program needs. Below is a direct quote from an officer he trained. Officer Prevett is very proactive and is very knowledgeable about case law and detailing with various situations on the street. He helped me understand a lot about the job and has an answer for most questions I could think of. He did his best to expose me to a variety of calls while in this phase to get me the most experience. FTO Prevett consistently has a very positive attitude and is motivating to be around. Officer Prevett, FTO of the quarter. Sorry, of the year. Communications Operator of the Year. Communication Lead Operator, Tracy Pierce. At the time, Senior Communications Operator Pierce, now Communications Lead Operator, has worked very hard in the Communications Center in 2022, putting her career above everything else. She has shown exceptional knowledge of each radio channel and has stepped up where needed for supervision and staffing. Communications Lead Operator Pierce remains consistently professional under all conditions in the center. She has shown great leadership skills this year, tested for Communications Lead Operator, which she obtained in February, and filled in as acting supervisor frequently. Communications Lead Operator Pierce was one of the last people who stayed when the Communications Center was at critical staffing and made sure to encourage others to stay. She has over 15 years with the Communications Center and has a wealth of institutional knowledge. Communications Operator of the Year, Communications Lead Operator Tracy Pierce. Supervisor of the Year, Lieutenant Sandy Springle. In July of 2022, Lieutenant Springle was assigned to the Communications Center to assume the role of PSAT manager once again. The Emergency Communications Center was down to single-digit certified dispatchers to cover the center's around-the-clock need for personnel, and morale was non-existent. One day, Lieutenant Springle stepped in, put on a headset, and helped to man the center. As a new leader of communications, she has never dispatched before, but this did not hinder her from coming in and helping, no matter what shift it was. She worked days, nights, and several split shifts to cover gaps. She brought in officers who had volunteered to help out staffing to give dispatch relief. For the first time in months, dispatchers were getting consistent days off and not working 12 to 18 hours of overtime during their shifts. Lieutenant Springle's first priority seemed to be getting control of the communications center and ensuring that dispatchers actually got off on time. There were many positive changes in the first month of her leadership. She listened to concerns, suggestions, and needs to make things better and followed through with what she said she was going to do. Staffing levels are continuing to grow in communications, and the harmony in the center continues to grow as well. Lieutenant Springle is what a leader should be: honest, trustworthy, and reliable. She leads by example, stands up for her people, and pushes us all in the communications center to be better professionals. Lieutenant Springle, Supervisor of the Year. Officer of the Year, Detective David Green. Now Detective Green, for the majority of 2022, Officer Green, is the Officer of the Year for 2022. Throughout this past year, then Officer Green responded to a residential fire, which was previously discussed. During the structure fire, during such, the structure was engulfed in flames, and he entered the building, and 2 juveniles were rescued. For this, he was awarded the Officer of the Second Quarter, Medal of Valor, and Department Commendation for the second quarter. He was also the recipient of a life-saving award in the first quarter and a noteworthy performance in the third quarter. Officer of the Year is Detective David Green. Thank you.
I now ask Chief Chandler to come forward for a few remarks.
Good afternoon. I think after the last 60 minutes, there is no question that heroes reside here. I cannot express how incredibly proud I am of the men and women of this organization. And not only the men and women of this organization, but the men and women of this city. It is impossible for us as a police department to do what we have to do without the help of our citizens. And as you've seen today, we work together. Whether it's dads that are at school or whether it's someone that sees somebody in medical distress, we come together to do what needs to be done. I cannot speak enough on these incredible officers and men and women in our civilian staff that have just over and over and again done more than what was expected, more than what was required, more than even sometimes what we thought was possible. So I would encourage each and every one of you, go out and tell somebody it is some wonderful things going on right here at the Suffolk Police Department. Thank you so very much, and thank you to each one of our staff members.
At this time, if you would please stand for our benediction, I would now ask Chaplain Bailey to lead us in our benediction.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for the extraordinary display of acts of selfless service. We ask that as we depart from this place, that we will never depart from your presence, and that you will continually equip us, whereas we will be steadfast, immovable, and always abounding in good works and servicing of this community. We ask that you continue to be with us as you continue to extend your grace and mercy to us all. In your name we pray, amen.